October 27, 1962, Sargasso Sea, Atlantic Ocean. Inside a Soviet submarine more than 100 meters below the surface, the air was almost gone. Vasili Arkhipov wiped sweat from his eyes as the metal walls around him creaked under pressure. The submarine B-59 had been submerged for days. No radio contact. No fresh air. Temperatures inside had climbed above 40 degrees Celsius. Men were fainting. Tempers were breaking. Then came the explosions. Depth charges detonated around the hull, not meant to destroy, but to signal. The crew did not know that. To them, it sounded like war had already begun. The captain believed Moscow had been attacked. Protocol was clear. The submarine carried a nuclear torpedo powerful enough to erase an entire American fleet. To launch it, 3 officers had to agree. 2 already had. All that stood between the world and nuclear war was one man, sitting in silence, trying to think clearly while the world above unknowingly held its breath. The Cuban Missile Crisis had reached its most dangerous day. For 13 days in October 1962, the United States and the Soviet Union stared directly into annihilation. American reconnaissance flights had revealed Soviet nuclear missiles being installed in Cuba just 90 miles from Florida. Missiles capable of reaching Washington, New York, and Chicago within minutes. President John F. Kennedy faced an impossible decision. Invade Cuba and risk immediate nuclear retaliation, or do nothing and accept nuclear weapons aimed at the American heartland. He chose a third option, a naval blockade, officially called a quarantine. American warships encircled Cuba. Soviet vessels approached the line. Every radar contact, every sonar ping, every misunderstood signal carried the potential to end civilization. Behind closed doors in Washington, Kennedy listened as his generals urged airstrikes and invasion. Many believed war was inevitable. Some believed it was necessary. In Moscow, Nikita Khrushchev paced, struggling to maintain control over a crisis that was slipping beyond his grasp. Orders sent hours earlier were now outdated. Communications lagged. Submarines like B-59 operated in near-total isolation, with commanders forced to interpret the world on their own. On October 27, an American U-2 spy plane was shot down over Cuba. Its pilot, Major Rudolph Anderson, was killed instantly. In Washington, pressure mounted to retaliate. In Moscow, fear spiked that the United States was preparing for full-scale war. And beneath the Atlantic, Vasili Arkhipov listened to the explosions grow closer. The captain shouted that the Americans were attacking. Another officer agreed. The nuclear torpedo was armed. The key was ready. Arkhipov did not shout. He asked questions. He argued that if war had truly begun, Moscow would have contacted them. He insisted the explosions were warnings, not attacks. He reminded the others that launching the torpedo would guarantee nuclear war, not just their deaths, but the deaths of millions who had no idea how close they were to the edge. Minutes passed that felt like hours. Finally, against protocol, against fear, against the crushing pressure of the moment, Arkhipov refused to give consent. The torpedo was not launched. The submarine surfaced. Communication was restored. The world continued turning. Above the waterline, families ate dinner. Children slept. Cities glowed peacefully at night, unaware that history had balanced on a single human decision made in suffocating darkness. Later that same day, back in Washington, Kennedy and Khrushchev began the quiet process of stepping back from the brink. A secret deal was reached. Soviet missiles would leave Cuba. American missiles would quietly leave Turkey. The crisis ended not with victory, but with relief, and a shared understanding of how close the world had come to ending itself. No alarms had sounded. No headlines had warned the public. No one knew how narrowly everything had been saved. Only decades later would the truth emerge. That the fate of the world had rested not on presidents or generals but on one exhausted man in a steel tube beneath the sea, who chose restraint when destruction was easier. And how many other moments like this history never recorded, remains an unsettling question.